Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul joined alongside Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia. No Zach, no Jack today, but they'll be back for the Week 2 preview show coming out later this week. Please remember, if you're checking us out for the first time ever, if you've been sticking around with us throughout the summer and into Week 1, to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Just over 12,000 subscribers now. We're really happy about that. Before the season kicked off, that was a little goal of ours internally, so we were able to check that off the box. If you can't listen or watch on YouTube, you can always check us out on audio as well. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us there. And becoming a member, you could go to our channel homepage. That's the Paul Farrington Show on YouTube, and you should be able to see the join button to become a member and participate in merch giveaways, different contests that we have. The Pigskin Pick'em League is off and running right now. Ziggy, I checked out the standings today. And I was a little disappointed to see I was 10-5. This is going into Monday Night Football. We're recording before the Jets and 49ers. So I was like, okay, 10-5. That's kind of bizarre. I thought I was going to do better than that. I didn't realize I picked the Browns to beat the Cowboys on my pick'em. That was my Monday morning headline, was pay the damn man about Dak. I went, oh my God, how did I possibly? I don't know what happened there, but I'm
just went with the favorite without thinking about it.
That's might be what I did. But here I am at 10-5. In first right now, going into Monday Night Football, is Patrick Williams at 13-2. So hot start for Patrick, and producer Zach right there, tied for second place at 12-3. I mean, he says ridiculous things, but maybe at the end of the day, it's just the guy to follow on this show might just be Zach.
I mean, he was 8 for 9 on anytime TDs.
The anytime touchdown streak that he's on is frankly unbelievable at the moment. I have no idea how he did it last year. He did it this year. I don't know if he has some sort of inside information or what, but he's been frankly amazing. So if you're listening to the show, we're probably going to start having a segment called Anytime Touchdown Zach, and let Zach just go, and 8 for 9 speaks for itself. So yesterday, Ziggy and I did it. Man, Sundays during the season, you forget just how taxing Sundays are for NFL shows. Where Ziggy and I, we're on from basically 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning. Like we are awake, alert, watching things, writing notes down, communicating about what the show's going to be. So we had a full episode come out that you could watch. We had a bunch of breakouts from individual games. Came back later for Rams Lions, which was just an awesome Sunday Night Football game. A great start to this regular season in Week 1. So you can check all that out on our channel as well. Later today, we'll be hitting Around the NFC North. That's a little segment we've started doing that a lot of people enjoy, where we're going to touch on all the teams, talk about who's in the best position after Week 1 and who's also in the worst in the black and blue division. But we never covered the 4 o'clock games, so we're going to go over them a little bit here. And Ziggy, feel free, if there was something from the 1 o'clock games that you learned or that you rediscovered yesterday while just watching highlights, feel free to bring it up.
I can tell you something that I learned from watching the 4 o'clock games that I learned about the 1 o'clock games.
Please.
I thought that the Bengals offense would be the most inept offensive performance we saw, or the Panthers offense would be the most inept offensive performance we saw, right? Whether you consider how bad it is versus wasting talent. Well, we got a performance that was worse and wasted more talent in the Browns-Cowboys game.
Yeah, Ziggy said right before the show started, if there was ever a game that revealed more about two teams which had question marks, maybe you found more answers in Cowboys-Browns than ever before, where Dallas comes in 33-17 win over Cleveland, and that 33-17 makes it look a little bit closer than it was with the late Jerome Ford touchdown. The late Jerome Ford touchdown, which was horrendous for one of my fantasy football teams, by the way. For anyone, I'm sure other people can relate to that. But 33-17 was the final score, and we were laughing before the show started, going over team stats. If you just looked at the box score here, and we're at the team stats page on ESPN, you'd think it was a close game. Both teams had 15 first downs. Yardage was a 265 to 230 Dallas advantage. The Browns had the ball for 2 minutes more than the Cowboys did. Like, if you looked at it there, you'd say, oh, okay, this was probably a pretty close game. 11 penalties for each team. Like, nothing too crazy. But then you go and you watch the highlights of this, and the Cleveland offense, once again, just completely inept under Deshaun Watson with him at the helm. People were hoping that this whole offseason, people kept referring to literally one half of Deshaun Watson football. And I'm not even sure. He did finish the game against Baltimore last year. when they came back and won. It was an amazing comeback for the Browns. But all of the hopes of Cleveland football were riding on one half because he was pretty bad last season when he played. But it was, but remember that one half before his season ended? Maybe he turned it around there. I'm not sure that he did that. On the Dallas end, though, another great defensive performance from them. Missing Deron Bland, that defense still looked awesome. Dak Prescott was efficient, if not complete, if not, eye-popping numbers. He played well. CD Lamb, always a force on the field. They had a punt return touchdown by Turpin. It was really a statement game for Dallas when last year teams going into Cleveland usually had a really tough time. What was more revealing to you, Ziggy? The ineptitude, as you said, of the Browns or the dominant performance from the Cowboys?
I think we knew that this Cowboys team going into the season would be pretty good. I know that they were a trendy pick to not make the playoffs, and everybody wanted to talk about how this team would struggle. As long as Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are leading this offense, and as long as Micah Parsons is leading this defense, this will be a solid football team in regular playoff contention. It's nice to know that they can go to Cleveland against a tough defense and perform, but that's not shocking to me. What was shocking to me, I thought this Browns offense would be bad. I did not think it would be this bad. I mean, Deshaun Watson couldn't get anything done. He averaged a net 2.7 yards per passing attempt when you take out the sacking yards. And he took 6 sacks. They couldn't get anything going. It's just all offseason, the Browns were hoping that this would be the season. Deshaun Watson, all the excuses are gone. He gets a full offseason. He's healthy. They've added a little bit more talent around him. Njoku broke out. You've still got Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy. Like, you've added all these players around him. I know Nick Chubb isn't there, but Jerome Ford is serviceable. And it got them nothing. At no point did it look like the Browns were a team that could win this game. You're down 20-3 at halftime. And they will need they're a worse version of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need the defense to win them any game that they can win. And I mean, we said it during the Steelers react. Myles Garrett is good. He often doesn't generate the kinds of popping plays that TJ Watt does. And frankly, at this point, I think I'd rather have Justin Fields than Deshaun Watson. It sounds crazy saying that.
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. You could have said that last year, probably. You could have said it last year.
Yeah, it feels like finally this franchise is back to being cursed. There is no hope for the Browns. And honestly, I know it's week 1. I feel like I'm overreacting. But any question I had about whether Deshaun Watson could lead an effective Cleveland Browns offense is gone. I know he can't.
Is there, and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate because I generally agree with you here. Is there any part of you that says, well, the Dallas Cowboys defense is one of the best in the league? Again, it's also week 1. Maybe just the combination of, he's not that good going against a great defense in the first game of the season. I'm willing to overlook it a little bit. Or are you just at this point, screw this, I'm tired of even asking the question?
I mean, Dak Prescott played an elite defense. And I mean, the Cowboys,
but we know Dak is a top 10 quarterback in football.
No, indeed. So I'm not saying he needed to look as good as Dak Prescott, but when you have some talent on offense and even against a good defense, you can put together some good plays. And, I'm willing to discount some of the bad plays that came near the end of the game for Deshaun Watson. But the offensive line played pretty well. I'm seeing the Browns have been blaming the offensive line, but he averaged over 4 seconds before he got pressured, which would have been 10th best or better in the league. Like, Deshaun Watson had time to throw. He's got weapons. The Dallas Cowboys secondary is no good. And he couldn't get anything going.
It's really tough if you're a Browns fan.
No,
I picked up on it. It's tough if you're a Browns fan because you're just sitting here looking at this team saying we have a top 3 defense in football. The weapons really aren't that bad. Offensive line generally should be good as the season goes on, but we have nothing from the quarterback, and we can't. You can't win in the NFL without the quarterback. Again, it's week 1. Maybe they turn it around. It was the Dallas Cowboys defense, but if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, just a horrendous start to the season. 33-17 makes it look closer than it was. Where this game was over on the Turpin punt return touchdown at the start of the second half. It was over 27-3.
if I'm a Browns fan, here's what I'm sitting back and thinking. The cap hit, Deshaun Watson signed a $230 million fully guaranteed contract. The cap hit up to this point from that contract has been under 60 million. So the vast majority of that deal has yet to be paid out.
It's getting worse.
It could be ugly in Cleveland for a long time. His cap hit next year is $73 million. It's $73 million to be a guy.
$73 million.
And you can sit back and wonder, is this guy worse than Justin Fields? And you have to pay him $73 million the next two seasons into 25 and 26. No, it's a disaster.
How about for Dallas? A lot of people won't talk about it, but Brandon Aubrey is just such a weapon. That guy is unbelievable. 4 for 4 field goals, 2 over 50 yards. Had a 57-yarder. I believe he had a 66-yarder that went in that got called back for a penalty. It might have been a false start. And the Cleveland fans were booing the Cowboys taking him off the field. That's how much they enjoyed it. They wanted to see the attempt at the 71-yarder.
I mean, that's the Notre Dame difference, right? He's the best NFL product to come out of Notre Dame in many years.
Just an absolute... It's a crazy stretch that he's on right now. I don't think he's missed yet, right? In the NFL, he hasn't missed a field goal.
I kind of don't know how this guy got missed, honestly. But no, he missed 2 field goals last year.
Oh, did he? Okay, he missed 2. But yeah,
points.
He's just been... I mean, he's
96% for his career.
Yeah, he was amazing yesterday. I thought he was actually... The story maybe was just how good Brandon Aubrey was, where they just they crossed the 50-yard line and they're in field goal range. It's crazy.
He's never missed a kick over 50 yards, ever.
Yeah.
And he's taken 11 or 12 of them. So it's not like there haven't been opportunities. He's just the best kicker in the NFL.
Blair Walsh, best in the NFL right now. Blair Walsh was 10 for 10 his rookie year. 10 for 10 or 12 for 12 from 50 plus.
Well, that's why it's such a relief to see him come out and be good again.
No, that's where it's when you have someone like that, as the season goes on for Dallas, you have these massive games. We've seen, Packers fans have seen last year with the miss against the 49ers. There's always, us Vikings fans know it better than anyone. You have a kicker you can trust. A late game scenario, you could hit a 55-yarder. That's game changing. So that was actually another great takeaway for Cowboys fans was that, this guy's still really freaking good at football. But I couldn't believe people who were so down on Dallas heading into this season. It's really at this point just kind of, I don't like Dak Prescott. I don't like the Cowboys brand. That's the only, I don't like Mike McCarthy or Jerry Jones. There's a lot of dislikable figures, or the Cowboys itself is a very dislikable team. But if you sit back and objectively look up and down that roster, there's no way they're missing the playoffs unless someone gets injured, unless a major contributor gets injured. It's just way too much talent. 12 wins. And McCarthy said it, since when did 12 wins become so easy? And they've done it 3 years in a row. I see no reason why Dallas shouldn't have their eyes on the Super Bowl right now. Just a really impressive week 1 performance in a hostile environment. I thought they were a huge winner of week 1. All right. Any closing thoughts on Dallas before we move on here?
I feel like I have said enough, and I know I don't want to know what Browns fans are going to come in and write in our comments, but honestly, at this point, I feel like the things they have to say about this team are worse than anything I could possibly say.
Probably. Look, the Browns will be competitive in a lot of games this year because the defense is that good. If Deshaun Watson doesn't turn it around, though, they're completely irrelevant, despite the great defense. You need some offensive production. Let's go over. Speaking of winners, maybe the biggest winner of the weekend, in my eyes, were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just throttled the Commanders in Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield, 289 yards, 24 for 30 throwing the football, 4 touchdowns. He was just, he was awesome. And Bucky Irving kind of emerged a little bit. Rashad White fantasy owners are probably sitting back here going, what the hell's going on here? But Bucky Irving was good. Rashad White, the receivers. I played against Chris Godwin in fantasy, who had a big game. Mike Evans, 2 touchdowns. If you're a Bucs fan, to see Baker come in, and the Commanders are supposed to be a bottom feeder, a lot of people are down on them, but there are a lot of people who also think that they could compete for the NFC East title this year. And they had a lot of additions to their defense. So to come in and just throttle a team that you expect to be bad, that means something. And on the other hand, you got to see the Falcons look kind of suspect against the Steelers. post week one, you have to be thinking the Bucs are now maybe more in line to be the favorites in the NFC South.
Yeah, I will say I do think this game was a little bit closer than things appear, and some of the things that the Buccaneers got away with, I wonder if they'll be able to get away with in future weeks. I mean, here's the fact, right? Is Baker Mayfield had an incredibly effective passing game, averaging an average depth of target of 4.7 yards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meanwhile, you've got Chris Godwin going for 11 yards a catch, Mike Evans 12, Rashad White 12. It's like these guys were incredibly productive after the catch. It is unclear to me that that's going to happen in future games. You had some really effective plays on third down, which was good, but you also had two missed Commanders field goals. So this game could have been quite a bit closer. But you can't fault them for getting a little bit lucky. They executed at an extremely high level. And the thing you were hoping for, if you were a Buccaneers fan coming into this game and coming into this season, was that Baker Mayfield wouldn't regress and that he could take advantage of the weapons who were there and continue to produce in the passing game. And I'm not going to fault him for throwing short passes to Mike Evans and letting Mike Evans do what he does best. I'm not going to fault him for letting Chris Godwin take care of business.
No,
like if you've got the weapons, use them.
Yeah, get it to the guys and let it work. But the problem last year for Tampa Bay, so as exciting as a 37-20 win is, where your quarterback looks awesome and there are questions around the quarterback, the thing that plagued Tampa Bay last season was really playing good teams. Like up until the playoffs, they kind of got murked in most of their big games. When Detroit came into Tampa, they got crushed in that one. Like it generally wasn't that pretty. So next week they go to Detroit in a 1 p.m. game, the place where they got knocked out last season. If Tampa goes in there and either A, plays another competitive game like they did in the divisional round, or B, beats the Lions, the goals are going to change for a lot of these Tampa fans who were maybe hoping to get into the playoffs. If they beat Detroit, it completely changes. So I thought they were a huge winner in week one. I'm seeing Antoine Winfield Jr. is out 2 weeks, which was one source of bad news coming out of Tampa Bay. But
despite winning the game, I do not think that the Buccaneers were the biggest winner in this game. As weird as that sounds, I was thrilled with what we saw from Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, there we go.
What do you want from me? I like to update my opinion in response to evidence, right? And I was super down on Jayden Daniels in the preseason. I did not think that he was going to come out and be successful. And yet clearly among all the rookie quarterbacks that played, right? Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jayden Daniels, he clearly had the best performance of any of them, and it wasn't particularly close. You know, he didn't get a passing touchdown. People have harped on that, but he had a few big plays, right? He had a nice pass to Brian Robinson. He did some other things really well. He was really effective on the ground between his designated rushing attempts and his scrambles. Designed. I don't know why I said designated. He was really effective on. Yeah, it sounds good, right? Like, oh yeah, they designate him to run, but he was an effective enough passer. He was a really good runner. And while the results weren't great for them, you know, they missed some field goals, which really hurt them. He had a few bad plays. Overall, I thought it was an excellent performance from him in his first NFL game. And I'm excited to see what he's able to do next.
Yeah, he finished 17 for 24, 184 yards, 16 attempts on the ground, you know, whether it was a designated run or just him scrambling around. 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of them came really late. But still, he wound up leading the team in rushing attempts on the day. Out of Caleb, Bo Nix, and Jayden, like you said, he was by far the most impressive one. The guy that you come away from this game thinking, all right, he's the guy I want to watch going forward. And a lot of people were hoping for that in Washington, given the explosiveness that he has. And I think the people who expect the Commanders to compete for the NFC East are much fewer than those of us who think, yeah, this is probably a 5-win team. So if you have those expectations, then you're looking at this game saying, oh, okay, like this is nice. Like this is something we can build. This is someone that we can build around going forward. So the Commanders fans, yes, even though they lost by 17 points, I think both fan bases can sit back and go, this is, generally speaking, a positive week one for the future here. I'm completely with you there. See anything else from this Commanders Bucs game? Any other big takeaways? There's only so much you could talk about Commanders Bucs.
No, I mean it was a solid win for the Buccaneers. It was a promising game for the Commanders, despite the results not being there. And yeah, as you said, if you're the Buccaneers, the thing you were eyeing is that Kirk Cousins looked pretty bad. And I know that might be the best defense the Falcons play all year. It'll certainly be the best defensive line they play all year. But the Falcons, boy, they've got a tough opening start to the season, right? They've got to go play the Eagles. They've got to go play the Chiefs. Then it's the Saints and the Bucs. If they lose to the Eagles and Chiefs and the Bucs are able to beat them, that's a Falcons team starting 1-4 and a Buccaneers team that's starting with a few wins.
Well, that's
They
what I'm
are
saying.
absolutely in play for the division.
That's what I'm saying, especially if the Bucs are able to get one. So over the next 3 weeks, the Bucs have Detroit, Denver, and Philadelphia. If you're able to get one of those, you should beat Denver at home. You're expecting to win that game. If you get Detroit or Philadelphia, if you win either of those games, and they'll be tough because Detroit on the road, difficult, and they definitely have that game circled after the wild card round last year. But if you get one of those wins, you could check off beating a contender, and then you can also check off that you're going to have a chance against Atlanta to probably put not bury them, but really bury them down in the standings early. It could be a big lead for Tampa Bay quickly. I was going to say the Saints aren't a threat, but they did look good. So you can't just write them off immediately. The Panthers you can write off.
Yeah, I think this will be a much more competitive division than people. I don't like to overreact to week one. I think this will be a much more competitive division than a lot of people thought it would be at the start of the season.
Yeah. And there are some good teams. I mean, there are some good teams there. Let's move on now to the next 4:00 game here. We'll go Seattle and Denver. So
I tried to tell them, Paul. The Broncos fans hated me because I spoke the truth. They would not listen to me.
I know. Well, Broncos fans were extremely excited after the Bo Nix preseason. And I'm not going to be the one to come out here and just say you're completely wrong. There's no reason to be excited. Bo struggled in this one against Seattle, but he wasn't so bad that you sit back and go, oh, geez, what have we done? It was more of just, all right, let's take back some of the expectations here a little bit. He finished 26 for 42, 138 yards. 130. The numbers are not pretty. 138 yards and 2 interceptions in Denver's loss here. And then Seattle's a good team as well. That's another thing to take away here. But I feel for Bo. There's just not a lot to work with in Denver. He wasn't great. He's not explosive. You said it. Anthony Richardson had big plays that kind of offset some of the throws where you go, what the hell are you doing? Bo Nix is a lot more check downs, a lot more throwing short of the sticks even on 3rd and 5. And there aren't many big plays to accompany it. So you sit back and if you're a Bronco fan, you say, all right, where are the real positives here? And if you don't have a bunch of playmakers like a team like Minnesota would for Sam Darnold, Sam is doing a lot of checking down when he can, but there's Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. You don't have that in Denver. You don't have guys who are going to get wide open, who are good at separating. I think it's going to be a long season for Denver, who they may have thought they could sneak in with the wild card following the preseason, but anyone else was sitting back here saying, slow down.
No, and it's, you said they don't have anybody. To put that in context, their leading receivers this game were Josh Reynolds, who's a solid wide receiver 3, and Devon Vele, the rookie who, he's on our Dynasty League. I had him pegged as a guy who was going to be good, and he's getting a lot of attention. But it's those guys, and then Cortland Sutton, if he's having a good game, Greg Dulcich. There's just not a lot to work with here. The run game isn't a whole lot better. So it's definitely a work in progress. I'm not here, I come to praise Bo Nix, not to bury him. I'm not saying that his career is over on the basis of this game.
No. We're not saying that.
No, the thing about Bo Nix, though, is he's got work to do in both directions, like you said. Not only does he need to reduce the negatives substantially, but he needs to improve the positives. Because even if you take out those negative plays, he was still not generating a ton of value for the Broncos this game. So, yeah, he's never going to be Anthony Richardson, right? He's not going to be a guy who is able to consistently run for a bunch of yards, who's able to bomb at 80 yards at the flick of a wrist. That's
throw
not him.
Still. That Richardson throw still. Last night, Chris Collinsworth said throw of the year for Matthew Stafford late in the Lions-Rams game. And I was like, that might be throw of week one so far. And then I went, wait a second, hold on. That Anthony Richardson 70-yarder. Sorry to distract you, but that
No, it's good. I'm always
amazing.
happy to talk about Anthony Richardson's big plays. It's just the Broncos clearly came into this game expecting a ton from him with 42 pass attempts. They gave up on the run game almost immediately when it wasn't working. And that is simply not going to work for developing Bo Nix. The Broncos' number one job is to find ways to help him out. Sean Payton's going to have to do it. He can't ride him like he rode Drew Brees. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's
yeah, you
things to
can't ride
be,
him like Drew
it could
Brees.
get better. Yeah, but when you have your rookie quarterback come out and throw 42 passes,
Oh,
that's
I'm with you.
exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
So, yeah, it's disappointing that they're going to need some work. It's too early to say it's over, but it's definitely a discouraging result.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not close to saying it's over for Bo Nix. We're just saying it was a disappointing debut. But the factors are that we said not a lot of weapons. You're on the road in Seattle, which is a really tough place to play. And they have a good secondary as well. There are a lot of good players on that defense. They're actually one of the rising defenses in the league. And again, then the rushing attack was nowhere to be found. I mean, Bo Nix led the team with 35 yards. I thought that was actually a positive. Was he scrambled well at times in this game? You got to feel it out. Most quarterbacks don't come in. Even C.J. Stroud last year, it took him a little while to get going and really emerge the way he did. Not saying Bo Nix is going to turn into C.J. Stroud for many different reasons right now, but I don't think you even have to panic if you're a Bronco fan after this. You're just going,
Yeah.
wasn't as good as I hoped.
Yeah, I'll say this much is as we complain about check down merchant Bo Nix, I do want to point out that Caleb Williams had fewer yards per attempt than Bo Nix.
Oh, yeah. No, Caleb was not
like that's the
impressive
thing.
at all.
Like Caleb Williams got absolutely bailed out by the defense and special teams to win the game. Jayden Daniels put up some impressive numbers, but there's a little bit more around him, and he also got the benefit of playing in some garbage time. Bo Nix got no help.
No, if Caleb Williams and Bo Nix were fairly similar performances. And I mean, I'm not going to get into like the numbers and what throws they were doing, but like if you were to say, did they play well or not? For both of them, you'd say no. Caleb just had punt return touchdown, interception return touchdown, and late interception on Will Levis all in the second half to win him the game, essentially. There was nothing that Caleb Williams did. Jayden Daniels was by far the most impressive, as we said. And real quick on Seattle, Kenneth Walker was awesome. 20 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. They're exactly what I thought they were going to be. The Seahawks. Like this was exactly how I expected them. They really didn't dominate this game. It was kind of close and up until like late third quarter, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But Geno Smith is still going to be very serviceable. He'll probably have a game or two like against the Cowboys when he was unbelievable. And then have a bunch of stinkers scattered in there as well. And this team will win 8 or 9 games, probably come up just short of the last wild card spot. But they'll be competitive. And Seattle fans, I don't want to be the one to dissuade you from dreaming of competing in the NFC West. But this is exactly who I think Seattle is, an 8 and 9 team that'll beat up on the teams at home that they should, and then probably lose a few games on the road that they shouldn't. Anything from the Eagles or the Seahawks before we go to the last team here?
I will say, while the box score doesn't show they dominated, I do think the Seahawks were a significantly better team here. The offense was still not great, but
they're just better. Yeah.
They had the muffed punt. They had some bad penalties. Like the Broncos definitely got some help there, but yeah, this wasn't the kind of performance where you sit back and think, all right, this Seahawks team is really competitive. It's a game where you sit back and think, all right, this Seahawks team can sneak into a wild card spot and maybe win a game if things go well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's where I stand as well with you. The last game here, the Chargers 22, the Raiders 10. Jim Harbaugh's debut. I don't think there's any stat that symbolizes the Jim Harbaugh effect more than the rushing stats in this one. 176 yards on the ground for the Chargers, the 71 for the Raiders. That's what Jim Harbaugh does. He comes in, he's going to dominate up front. He's going to push you around. J.K. Dobbins. A lot of people probably, one, didn't know that he was even on the Chargers, and two, thought his career was over after all the injuries with the Ravens. 10 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown. If they get that guy going, there is a lack of weapons in LA. Maybe I should rephrase that. There's a lack of proven weapons in LA. there's a lot of hope that you could get guys like Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston going. Like there's talent on this team, but there just hasn't been a lot of proven talent. If you could get the ground game going with J.K. Dobbins, that's a huge help to Justin Herbert and the passing offense here. It was a closer game than 22-10 makes it look. Like the Chargers pulled away really in the final 4 minutes with a touchdown to Ladd. But a great win against the Raiders team that is sneaky, and they're going to be a tough out for anyone this year. A great start for the Jim Harbaugh era, and I was I don't want to say impressed, but I think it was a very solid win against a quality opponent.
Yeah, it's the Chargers definitely benefited from 2 back-breaking fumbles from the Raiders, right? There was that one fumble of about 1:30 left in the second quarter, and then another about halfway through the third. Then they followed up that missed third quarter fumble of a missed Daniel Carlson field goal. So, like, I would say the Raiders beat themselves as much as the Chargers won the game. So, yeah, it's a nice performance. And as you say, right, the running game was good, which was nice because they didn't have to ask Justin Herbert to do much of anything. When's the last time, I wonder, when Justin Herbert could comfortably enough win a game passing fewer than 30 times? That has not been the stories of the Chargers.
When the defense allows under 20 points, it's like an 80 or 85% win percentage, right?
Yeah, and when it's under 28, it's like 70%. If you just surround them with an okay team, they're good. They were also helped by Antonio Pierce's absolutely bizarre 4th down decision processes. Right? If you remember in the first quarter on his own side, he went for it. On the opponent's side in the 4th quarter, down by 6 points, he didn't. So, like, what exactly was going through? I think probably nothing was going through his head, honestly. But stuff like that just kills you. So, yeah, I mean, the Chargers took advantage of a Raiders team that had a lot of problems, and they're happy to win. I'm not trying to say they didn't do anything. But I don't feel like we learned a lot from this game. Justin Herbert wasn't asked to do a lot. We didn't really get to see how this offense will look. They were able to run over the Raiders. The Raiders weren't able to punch back. And you're always happy to win in the division, right? I'm not saying this is meaningless.
Always.
But this doesn't tell me, I think, very much about how either of these teams will be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think they'll be similar throughout the year. They're going to be a tough opponent. Justin Herbert will make anyone tough, but then on top of that, the Jim Harbaugh effect of how strong their rushing game should be, winning in the trenches. They're both going to be good teams this season. It's just kind of strange. It was like I kept looking over that game, and it's like, I mean, what was it, 10-9 at halftime or something like that? It was 7-6. Yeah, 7-6. Like, really, it wasn't a fun watch, so to say.
No, it was a tough watch. And if you look at the Chargers' schedule, they host the Chiefs on September 29th. But otherwise, they play the Panthers, the Steelers, the Broncos, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Browns, and the Titans in 7 of their next 8 games. Like, I don't think we're going to have a good idea of who this team is until later in the season when they're playing. I guess they play the Bengals and the Raiders, and they go right back to play, or the Ravens, and they go right back to playing the Falcons, the Bucs, the Patriots. Like, this is not a very hard schedule for this team. I don't know. I feel like we're not going to have a good idea of who this team is until way, way later.
Hey, if you know what, you get an idea of who the team is if they're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, or beating the teams that are toss-up games. If they're winning all those, then I mean, you have to say they're a threat, because all you have to do is win a 1 or 2, get lucky against the good teams, or just show up. Like, maybe they are good. Who knows? It'll be fun to track them throughout the season. All right, let's wrap up this show here with a little Around the NFC North, a segment that we've enjoyed doing quite a bit over the past few months throughout the summer. Around the NFC North. So the Bears, it was, again, they win the game. You have to be happy with the come from behind win. Again, down 17-0. The Titans look like they're in complete control. And all of a sudden, the tides really turn on the blocked punt for Chicago. They block a punt, return for a touchdown, 17-7. They're back in, or 17-10 maybe at that point, back in business. You really, though, if you look back on the game and watch the Bears offense, it was kind of miserable throughout the day. They had their moments. I thought DeAndre Swift actually had a couple plays here or there. His stats weren't great at all, but he had a few moments where I went, okay, Swift can play. You know, Keenan Allen had some catches, but Caleb Williams, for the most part, was very disappointing. He was just off target a lot of the times. He tried to extend plays, and this is what Jack always got on him for. He tries to extend plays, and all of a sudden can find himself in trouble where Earlier in the game, the Bears are on the 25-yard line. He runs back and takes a 20-yard sack. 2 plays later, they're out of field goal range. They have to punt the football. There are a lot of miscues from the Bears, whether it was sacks like that, penalties, negative rushing attempts on 2nd and 5. I thought as a Bears fan, your takeaway is happy with the win, but you're not giddy from this game. You're just like, I think it's more of holy crap, how did we win that?
Yeah, I'm sure that's a feeling that Bears fans have had a whole lot in recent years watching this team. In addition to the, oh my goodness, how did we lose that game? Right? That's just the Chicago Bears experience. But yeah, it's both of these offenses were putrid in the pass game, right? Both the Bears and the Titans were. So like there wasn't it was a tough game for Caleb Williams. He wasn't accurate. He wasn't getting the ball where it needed to go. And it's nice when
there's a lot of batted passes.
Yeah, I think that's just adjusting to the NFL. It's so different playing at USC, right? And again, he wasn't unique in this. No rookie quarterback this week, none of the starters threw a passing touchdown. It's so hard to be good in the NFL when it takes time. I didn't see anything that makes me worry about him long term, right? You saw the potential of some of these scrambles. You've seen what he's been able to do up until this point. But yeah, averaging 3.2 yards per attempt. His completion percentage over expectation was minus 20%. It was a bad game.
He had 93 yards. He had 93 yards passing. That's at one point in the first quarter. I think their passing yards were negative 14. Like that's the kind of day it was.
And if you want to pound the table and say, well, he didn't turn the ball over, he had a fumble. It was recovered by the Bears, but he could have lost it.
No, they won this game because the Titans completely imploded. It was, you mentioned it with the Raiders. The Raiders self-destructed. The Titans maybe 2x that. It was, and the Titans' mistakes were catastrophic too. The pick 6 that Levis threw to really ice the game, or not ice the game, but give Chicago the lead, was just, I mean, one of the worst. We talk about Riley Leonard's throw against Northern Illinois. You got to just, and this is something that maybe a young quarterback needs to learn. Just go down. The play's over. Don't make a bad play horrendous. Don't make it a catastrophic play. And
their win probability, they lost 44% on that throw. They went from comfortably winning the game to almost certain to lose. I think
it was 17-16 at that point, and the Bears offense couldn't do anything. The Bears offense didn't move up and down the field at all really in the second half. It was one that the Titans get away from them, one that I'm sure Will Levis is kicking himself over. But if you're a Bears fan, hey, you take it, you move on. You got a rookie quarterback who we all think by midseason is going to get a lot better. And this is just growing pains. And when you can have wins during growing pains, you sign up for it. So I thought.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to make it sound like it was 100% on Caleb Williams. Bears fans are going to come in. You're incredibly talk about the dropped Keenan Allen touchdown. That absolutely should have been there. And Keenan Allen is a player who you really hope can catch that. So it's not all doom and gloom, but Caleb Williams and the Bears are just going to have to produce more on offense because you can't count on, in critical moments, a pick 6, a punt block, a Will Levis fumble. Those were the 3 most negative plays in the entire game.
Yep.
And you just can't count on that happening every time.
And hey, the defense made plays. The defense, 10 QB hits. The Chicago defense was flying around. Soldier Field was rocking. If they can win those ways, that's great for them right now. Let's go over to the Packers. The big news out of Green Bay today was that Jordan Love will not be placed on IR. They're hoping he's back between weeks 4 and 6. Quite fitting that Jordan Love would return for the Viking game as the schedule plays out for them. It's the Vikings and then who they have after that. The Vikings followed by so it's the Titans this weekend. I'm sorry, I'm way off here. The Colts, then the Titans, then the Vikings. Those are the next 3 opponents for the Packers. He'd be set to come back for the Vikings game, the Rams, or the Cardinals between weeks 4 and 6. There's a world where Green Bay is even 2-1. The Colts and Titans are 2 opponents that Malik Willis looked really bad has looked really bad in his career so far. But the Titans and Colts are 2 teams that you could potentially escape with the win there. And if Jordan Love comes back in week 4, it's really no sweat.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way they're talking. The return is expected between week 4 and 6, but that's just sort of reasoning it out. they're still talking like there's a chance that Jordan Love will play this week. I don't think
That's
he
not
will.
happening.
I think that's very improbable, but that tells you what things are like in the building, right? They expect him to be back soon.
It went as
What I
well as it could, basically.
find, yeah, I will be honest, I find the Packers quarterback plan puzzling for the following reason. They have said that they're planning on starting Malik Willis until Jordan Love is healthy. What?
Well,
I mean,
that makes you
clearly,
think that he has to be coming back sooner because let's say
yeah.
Jordan Love was out 4 weeks, then it's probably worth it to go out and try and get Ryan Tannehill or someone who can be more effective.
Get Dobbs, get someone who can play a game.
Unless if Malik Willis behind the scenes has been playing really well, which I can't imagine.
I mean, what did we see at the end of that Eagles game, right? He didn't even get the throw off.
I know. That's what I said before when I was like, he didn't even play well. I went, well, it's one play, but still didn't get the throw off. The Tannehill question is a fun one to talk about because there are a bunch of reports whether or not the Packers have even reached out to Tannehill at this point, and they have about $16 million in cap space right now if they were to make a move. If it's for 1 week or 2 weeks, I don't think you do that. But at some point, Jordan Love were to miss 4 or 5 games, I'm not sure that you can afford to lose all of those. Like there's a certain level of if you're 0-5 or 0-4, then your season could be done. Like that actually could be the season right there. So this is a really tricky time for Green Bay at the moment because they do have to win a couple of these games. They can't afford to lose out up until Love. I don't think they're good enough to. I really just don't think they're good enough to run the table when Love gets back.
Yeah, I mean 0-4, 0-5, that's as bad or worse a record than 2-6. And you saw the kind of run it took from Green Bay in order to barely squeak into the playoffs after that start. Now, Jordan Love may well come back and be very good. I think that's a likely outcome, but to light it up like he did then, that's a huge ask. But again, I mean, I've said this multiple times this offseason. It's weird how this keeps coming up. Malik Willis is not an NFL quarterback. I don't know what he is. If somehow the Packers can make Malik Willis into a functional quarterback, put Tom Clements in the Hall of Fame. Honestly, give him his own wing if he can do that. I do not believe in Malik Willis at all. I don't see how he fits into this offense and what they want to do. But clearly they see something I don't. On the other hand, though, you said they've got the Colts and then they've got the Titans. I will say this, the Packers do not have the Bears offense. Right, they cannot, or the Bears defense, excuse me. They cannot handle Malik Willis throwing for 93 yards and count on a special teams play and a defensive touchdown. We saw a bad performance against the Eagles. I think it'll get a little bit better, but I am not expecting the defense to be able to carry this team. They are going to need to see something on offense.
Yeah, and if it's Malik Willis, it's gonna be tough. So you got to hope you get one of them there. And then something that I've kind of been mulling around my head today, and I'm not really sure where I'm coming down on the take, was just from watching Jordan Love against the Eagles. The Packers offense is explosive. They can score from anywhere on the field on any given play. Like that's just part of the product of having Josh Jacobs, the receivers they have. Jordan Love's got a big arm. But I didn't think he was great against Philly by any means. There were a lot of throws. Nakobe Dean had a near pick 6. He just dropped it. Love was he keeps doing this thing where he throws off his back foot. I know he's got talented arm, but there's a couple times where if he just drives it into someone, I think his receiver can catch it and keep running, and he kind of lobs it, throwing into double or triple coverage, where the run that he had last year, the final 10 games, was essentially flawless. Jordan Love really didn't do anything wrong up until the 49ers game with the turnovers. And I'm not trying to sit up here and say that, he's going to fall apart as the season goes on. I'm just saying, for the Packers to really, really be a Super Bowl contender, I think that they do need that elite Jordan Love. And now coming off an injury where I don't know what the chances of re-injuring an MCL sprain are, I think it's a little concerning in Green Bay at the moment because you got to win these games without him. And then when he comes back, how good is the team going to be? Are they going to be able to win these games against the Texans, the 49ers, without Love being awesome? And I didn't think he was awesome against Philadelphia.
No, I mean, the thing that you need to see from Jordan Love and the Packers offense as a whole is more consistency.
Yeah.
Right. During that great last 8-game run and last year, Jordan Love completed 70% of his passes. In this game, he completed 50%. You can look at success rate. Jordan Love's success rate was 40%. Now they still were ended up being positive on offense because of that deep Jayden Reed touchdown. But usually when you're effective on well less than half of your plays, that's not a formula that correlates to success and was a large part of why they lose. Right? Similarly, they're going to need more out of Josh Jacobs too, right? Their biggest running play by far came from that long touchdown run from Jayden Reed. I'm sorry, Jayden Reed you can't count on him to print a 35-yard rushing touchdown on demand. Like everything on this offense needs to get more efficient and it needs to get more consistent. And if they can do that, Jordan Love will continue being a home run threat. He will continue to be able to make big plays, but they can't forget in light of that you have to be able to make the little plays too to set those up.
Yeah, everyone knows that we'll talk about the Packers as glowingly as any podcast really on the face of the earth when they deserve it. But at the same time, when they really should have won that Eagles game, that was a game that they could have taken advantage of very early with the 2 turnovers. They missed the 43-yarder, stalled out inside the 10-yard line a lot. You convert those field goals to touchdowns, and Green Bay's probably walking out of this game 1-0. Let alone the defense. How disappointing is it to give up? And Philadelphia does this. I think the Eagles are better at this than maybe anyone in the NFL of having long, time-consuming drives when they need it. 16 plays, 67 yards, 8 up, 7:25 on the clock. That's just the Packers defense. You got to get off the field. Got to find a way because that essentially iced it for Philadelphia. So even though there were a lot of positives for Green Bay, given the performance of the offense and the explosiveness, the defense, starting to collapse in the second half. The inconsistencies, those are some of my concerns to go on top of the Love injury. But this is very much still an NFC, big-time NFC contender as long as the Love injury doesn't deflate them. We'll wrap it up here with the Vikings and the Lions. So the Vikings, as we said, 28-6, dominant win. It was awesome. We know it's the Giants. We're well aware of who the opponent was. But when people were questioning Sam Darnold against the Giants defensive front, the Giants front 7 all week, all we heard was how he's going to get eaten alive. Feels pretty good to see him go 19 for 24 for 208 yards and the 2 touchdowns. That was just awesome. And Aaron Jones looked great. He finished with 14 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. It was just a great performance from Minnesota on offense and defense. 12 QB hits, the pick 6 for Van Ginkel. Bad opponent. We know it. But if you're a Vikings fan like we are, it's a great feeling to see them come and just absolutely demolish a team they should.
Yeah, and I get that it's a bad opponent. People say that over and over again. It's as if they think the Giants aren't an NFL football team with NFL level talent.
Yes.
Like winning 28-6. I mean, we saw, right, of the Cincinnati Bengals, putting away a talentless team is a lot harder than it sounds because they'll still have some stars. They will still have productive players. And like Daniel Jones, even though he's not great and he often struggles, he can be a threat on the ground. He can sometimes make big plays. They added some weapons around him. Like the fact that the Giants offense was so bad. I mean, their percentiles of success. For the Giants, it's 4. With the Vikings, it's 82. They were complete inverses. The Vikings looked great. And again, you can beat the table that it's a bad opponent all you want. It was an NFL team, and they demolished them. And what was the spread, right? The Vikings were favored by 1.5.
Yep.
It's not like everybody expected. It's easy to sit back after the game and say, oh, yeah, we knew the Vikings would obliterate them. Well, and I hope you put your money where your mouth is on like an alternate spread, Vikings minus 10.5. No, people didn't think this was going to happen. And Sam Darnold lit them up. It was the best game of his career in MetLife. The defense was everything that was promised. It's hard not to get excited. And, yeah, sure, we've got a tough game coming up. How'd that go last year?
Yeah, this is where it's very important for Vikings fans. We had the North break. We're cautiously optimistic is always the phrase.
No, Notre Dame has let me down. I am all in. The Vikings will not break my heart. They're going to do it.
It was fun. The front set, I really thought that the defense was flying around. They looked great. It was for an Around the NFC North segment, the Vikings, maybe the big winners. Honestly, maybe like if you had to rank the NFC North teams in terms of winners, losers, not winners or losers, but like how excited the fan base should be post week 1, you probably go Detroit 1, Vikings 2, Bears 3, Packers 4, given the Love injury. I think that's probably where it falls.
Yeah, I mean, this game was proof of concept for everything the Vikings have been talking about all offseason, right? They said, yeah, look, we know the JJ McCarthy injury or benching before he was injured, it's a disappointment, and people want to see him out here. But we believe in the new guys we're bringing in. We believe in Sam Darnold, and this can be a competitive team. And sure enough, right, the new guys all show up. It's a highly competitive team. And it's one of only two games this weekend that didn't come down to a like nail biter near the end, at least in that slate. I mean, I guess what there was the Cowboys-Browns game. There were a few games later in the day that pulled away. But during that slate, that and the Saints-Panthers games were the only ones where a team decisively beat their opponents.
It felt good. It felt good. And last but not least, the Lions and the Rams. So the Lions come away with the overtime win 26-20 over Los Angeles. So we won't talk about this too long because we did an entire reaction to it that you could check out on YouTube of the Sunday Night Football game. But basically, in summary, we said, great day for the Lions offense. You got to see how explosive Jameson Williams can be, perhaps now that he's healthy and ready to go. Amon-Ra Laporta basically did nothing, and you still beat a very good football team in the Rams. And on the defensive side, Eden Hutchinson was an absolute monster. There's work to be done still in the secondary. Terry and Arnold got picked on a little bit as the game wore on. Cooper Kupp had a huge night. Like, you got to try to shore up a little bit there. Again, especially when you're going against quarterbacks like Dak Prescott. As we move further on into Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts. There's good quarterbacks in the NFC. Even if it doesn't quite have the star power that the AFC names do. But yeah, I think overall Detroit was probably the biggest winner because they got a huge win at home against a very competitive NFC team and kind of cemented, hey, we're here this season. Like, let's hey, look, the Rams probably should have won. Like, the Rams had them on the ropes. But it's a tough win for a tough Detroit Lions team.
Yeah, it's the secondary is certainly going to get tested again next week, right? They were fortunate that Puka Nacua got out of the game pretty early. Between Godwin and Evans next week, it'll be another challenge for the secondary. But I am confident that they will be able to do it. I know that, like, Jared Goff wasn't as good as people wanted. That's true. And they relied a lot on the run game. And Cooper Kupp, I know he had big looking numbers, right? 110 yards, but that was also with 21 targets, right? He only averaged 5 yards a target, which in fact, like, that's a pretty good performance when you're making Cooper Kupp inefficient and you're limiting everybody
you know
else.
what?
No, look, I
the numbers say one thing, but he had some big time catches. I mean, he destroyed them throughout most of the game.
They held Matthew Stafford to one passing touchdown. They intercepted Matthew Stafford one time on a nice play in the end zone. I am confident that this secondary will be able to rise to the challenge next week, and they'll be able to continue to do so for the rest of the season.
Well, and this is
I'm sorry, when you target a player 21 times, he's going to put up some numbers. 21 targets for 110 yards, that's downright bad.
No, it was not bad. I mean, some of he was making big catches, moving the chains. The catch he had at the end of the game was unbelievable. Like, Cooper Kupp had the rushing touchdown too. He was all over the place. I'm not gonna sit here and let you say Cooper Kupp had an inefficient, bad Sunday Night Football game when he
was inefficient compared to the volume he got. That is just
he's the only guy in the
Lions secondary
who could do anything after Puka went down. It gives Tyron and Cooper Kupp, and he's still. If I were the Rams, I'd be triple teaming him, for crying out loud. The guy was the only person on the field that Stafford was looking at. The interception, that was funny with the paint in the end zone too, with blending in. I just don't think Stafford even saw him, truthfully. But no, if you're Lions, there are the elite contenders, and then there are the secondary contenders in the NFC. The Rams are a secondary contender. The Bucs are a secondary contender. To put yourself firmly in that number one category, you got to beat those number two teams. And they have a chance in the first 2 weeks. They are at home in both of them, but you can beat the Rams, beat the Bucs, establish that separation there, feel good going into your next few weeks. Like, this is a Lions team that could get off to a very hot start. I believe the schedule is kind of light after that, right?
Well, yeah, so they go to Arizona, they host the Seahawks, and then their first real challenge of the year, besides this, October 13th, they go to Dallas.
Yeah, it's not as light as I remember. Cardinals, Seahawks, Dallas are all tough. Then at Minnesota, not a walk in the park. This is a telling schedule. It's a telling schedule, actually, the more you look at it for Detroit. At Green Bay, at Houston, Jacksonville, at the Colts, they'll be able to show everyone that they're for real, and we all believe that they are. really good win
Yeah.
for the Rams. Or for
What they will need if
the
they
Lions.
want to win those games is they need more out of Jared Goff. Jared Goff was barely good enough this game. He certainly didn't play like I'm a big Jared Goff defender, right? But in
Or
this
maybe
game,
the biggest.
He did not play like a quarterback who deserved the monstrous extension he got this offseason. I don't think that's a problem because I think longer term he's going to be a very good quarterback. But this game, they ran 30 times. They dropped back to pass 31 times. Clearly, they would rather lean on the run game in this one. And, it might have been Goff just having a bad game, right? That happens.
Also, look at how they in overtime, how they just bullied them. I mean, that was probably the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're not going to pass the ball just because
You're
David
just running
Montgomery.
down their throat.
Yeah. No, and that's not Jared Goff's fault. When you've got a great run game, you've got a great run game. But when he went back to pass, it wasn't always great.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, some of the bigger plays, there were some great plays, right? That Jameson Williams touchdown was excellent, but he took a couple of bad sacks. There were a couple other bad plays there. I think that this Lions offense is very good. I am not worried about them, but they will, when it comes time to beat a team like Dallas, when it comes time, they play Buffalo this year. They play the 49ers this year. To beat these explosive offenses, you need to be able to pass the ball effectively. That's going to need some work, but it's week one. Like Dan Campbell said, this team's only going to get better from here. Lions firmly deserving of that number 2 most optimistic start to the season in the NFC North.
Easily. All right, there you have it. A little bit of a recap from the 4:00 games around the NFC North. We'll be back for a mailbag later this week. We'll be back with Jack and preview, cap of the week. Little producer Zach, anytime touchdown prop. It'll be a lot of fun. So we appreciate everyone who's been sticking with us through week 1 of the season and on to week 2. Season rumbles on.
Hold on, that was a nice ending, but before we end, I got to say one thing.
Please.
People think Ziggy's like the nerdy stats guy, and like maybe that's true. That's certainly part of it. But here's something I just have to say: if you think that I'm always on board with this, do you know what Jalen Hurts' PFF rating was this weekend, Paul?
No, what was it?
I have to say something. It was 29. At first, I thought it might be a typo, so I went and double checked. Bo Nix was a 40. The next lowest player on the Eagles offense was like a 50 or a 51. I don't know if I'm crazy. We should have somehow put this. I don't know how I forgot to put this in like the Eagles Packers segment that we ran, but I don't know. Did you see something I didn't? I know that Jalen Hurts didn't have a great game, but that game that's a putrid score. This guy is an absolute bum off the street. That is worse than Caleb Williams.
70 is like a little bit below average.
I don't even know what the numbers mean anymore.
I think it's almost like the way I viewed it a little bit was like academics. Like, you're in the 70s, it's B's. You're like, okay, he was okay. And
they tried to make it more like Madden numbers. It used to be a lot easier to understand, but Arif Hassan actually is a great piece on how PFF sucks now because venture capitalists bought it.
But a 29 is frankly horrifying.
That's supposed to be the equivalent of a 29 rating in Madden.
Yeah, that's I don't know. Sometimes the PFF grades just go over my head. I don't know how you get there. I actually thought Jalen Hurts made a lot of really big plays, and I mean, he had the great throw to AJ Brown. Like, I thought Jalen Hurts played well. No one was great in that game. Like, I don't think Jordan Love was awesome in that game, but Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Bryce Young was a 32.
Yeah,
right. So they're saying that Jalen Hurts had a worse game than Bryce Young. I'm sorry. I
can't.
So I don't know. It's Eagles fans who say, I often laugh. Eagles fans will come here and say we're disrespected. Nobody likes us. Nobody believes in us, whatever. And I used to think that was just ridiculous. Like every team says this. But I don't know. That is so disrespectful to Jalen Hurts. They're saying actually that he's well below any like undrafted free agent you could sign.
The Panthers lost 47-10.
Yeah, and I get Bryce Young had like a nice little rushing touchdown, but he played one of the worst games.
That's why I don't care about PFF. I just don't care about PFF grades. I see what I see and I go off of that. That's what I.
Well, this is what's disappointing is like PFF. Within the NFL, PFF is well regarded, not because of this stuff, but because they have other really good products. This public-facing stuff they do, it's all fantasy now. It's all this grade, that grade. They used to have a methodology I could understand. Now they won't tell you how they reach their numbers. They just sort of look and glean. Their public-facing stuff is garbage. So trust the numbers. Don't get me wrong. I love my stats. I love my analytics. But PFF, big question mark.
Yeah.
So this is why you watch to
Weird
the
number.
end, right? We might just run a ridiculous segment at the end of the show, and you never know what's coming.
Well, there you go. Thanks again to everyone who listened to this episode, and we'll catch you for our week 2 preview stuff. See you then.